So a lot of people have been talking about the new Jeffrey Dahmer movie on Netflix. I personally didn't even hear about it until I was driving down Sunset and saw a big billboard with Jeffrey Dahmer's eyeballs looking at me. And personally, I don't love a serial killer being on a giant billboard. I don't love it, okay? I have not checked out the film. Personally, I don't intend to. I feel like a lot of things get skewed with Netflix. Not against it if you're watching it. Just not really for me. But I feel like there's been a lot of conversation around it, and I wanted to recap one of my favorite things. And God, is that f***ed up of me? Whatever. People that are giant pieces of finding out what happens in the afterlife, aka prison. So we have 3 people involved: Jesse Anderson, Christopher Scarver, and of course Jeffrey Dahmer. These 3 men were working together. It was a prison day. I don't know, maybe they're doing laundry, something like that. And on this particular day, the guard wasn't around. But before we get to this day, let me just rewind a little bit for you, because you're probably like, who are these people? Like, sure, I gave you a name, Christopher Scarver, but what are they in for? What do they do? Let's start with Jesse Anderson. Jesse Anderson was a man that was convicted for, I believe, life after stabbing his wife 21 times to death. After it happened, he tried to blame 2 black guys. I mean, that's just, I guess, the go-to in the 70s. But the police were on him. Eventually, it was revealed that, of course, he was the killer. They got information that the day after the murder, Jesse called the insurance company. Insurance company reports it back to the police, and they're all over him. They end up taking him in. Second, we have Christopher Scarver. A little more of a complicated situation. So Christopher Scarver was a guy who was addicted to drinking. He was a real heavy drinker. Then his mom kicks him out, and he starts drinking even more. He eventually got a role as a trainee carpenter at the Wisconsin Conservation Corps. And then they told him that he would be full-time after completion. Well, after he completes the course, they offer him $15 an hour, which he's just not accepting of. He gets really upset, and I believe he came back to the establishment and he shot his boss in the head, and he went around the office demanding more money. He got away with about $3,000, and they captured him, and he was convicted for life. And then, of course, we have Jeffrey Dahmer. Do I need to get into it? So those are our 3 players, okay? Now, Chris was a black man. I don't think Chris liked that most of Jeffrey's victims were also black men. I don't think he liked that Jesse tried to pin his own crime on 2 black men. There was also one report that Chris might have been schizophrenic. And another thing was Jeffrey was always taunting the inmates. It was very well known that sometimes Jeffrey Dahmer would play with his food, and he would reconstruct the food into what looked like human limbs, and he would brag about it. And people did not like this. So here's what happened on that day. 3 guys are assigned to some kind of, prison job, something like that. There's no guard around for whatever reason. Chris, the guy that was convicted for life, is working with Jeffrey. He said at one point somebody had poked him in the back, and he didn't know which one of them had done it. And he gets pissed off. He turns around to Jeffrey, and he takes this big metal pipe out of his, that he was hiding, which is a very important detail. If he's saying that this just happened out of nowhere, they provoked him, well, why did he have the pipe ahead of time? We'll get to that. And he beats Jeffrey Dahmer to death. That was it. Jeffrey was just doing laundry or something, and this dude came through with the pipe, beat the shit out of him. Then afterwards, he walks over, he finds Jesse, does the same exact thing. Chris Scarver actually doesn't give very many details about this. The way that he talks about it, it's almost as though he did what he had to do. If everyone in prison hates a certain inmate and you're working with them or you're cellmates with them, they literally expect you to kill them. You don't put somebody that's in a life sentence with somebody that's really hated in the jail, because they will kill them. They're not getting out anyways, and it just literally gets them more clout in jail.
It was a brutal murder behind bars, a shocking lapse of prison security. And while correction officials
I think they told them guards to go somewhere, because those guards knew they were supposed to be around Dahmer the whole time. I think somebody knew.
promise an investigation, no one involved with the Jeffrey Dahmer case says that they're surprised.
I use the word hit, and that has been one of the rumors that has been running rampant, was that this was some sort of a hit.
Exactly what happened is still not clear. Dahmer was cleaning a prison bathroom with 2 other inmates when suddenly one of them apparently took a broom handle and started beating Dahmer to death.
It was a metal bar.
Prison officials say Dahmer's head may have been bashed against a wall.
There was so much animosity toward him with a number of the inmates were either jealous or resentful over his celebrity status.
Jealous? I don't think anybody was jealous of his celebrity status. I think they just hated him.
Officials say it was this man, Christopher Scarver, who carried out Dahmer's death sentence.
How they caught the assailant is that he was covered with blood. There was apparently a great deal of blood at the scene.
Prison officials won't say why 3 guards assigned to the area left the inmates alone. But for now, they insist the guards did nothing wrong.
I'm confident that staff did everything that they were...
That's funny because that's something y'all would say in the comments. The guards did nothing wrong. That's y'all.
supposed to be doing and looking out for the safety of the inmates in this situation.
In 1991, Dahmer was sentenced to live out his life here at the state prison in Portage, Wisconsin. But those who knew him say that Dahmer never believed that he'd survive behind bars for very long.
He knew.
I'm not surprised. I had predicted that he would be killed in prison because he had a death wish. He always had a death wish. He was a sick kid. He knew he was sick.
In recent months, Jeffrey Dahmer apparently had found religion.
I think it's interesting that sometimes in these interviews, they try to portray Dahmer as though he was accepting of what he did and shameful and, well, I'm not going to live too long. Yet he was taunting the other inmates by rearranging his food to look like human limbs. He had no remorse. There was no acceptance of, I'm a sick person, I need help. He was taunting people, and I'm sure that's not the only thing that he did.
He was formally baptized in May, and in the prison chapel, he confided to the minister about how he was ready to accept the ultimate punishment.
Now that he's a Christian, and he felt personally that he deserved to be put to death for his crimes, the question was, am I sinning against God by continuing to live?
So it appears that Jeffrey Dahmer may have wanted to die, to end his tortured life, to rid himself of his inner demons. And to the families of his victims, Jeffrey Dahmer's death sentence finally brings an end to their private suffering.
Whoever did kill him, he's my hero. I will be sending a thank you card to this hero.
The autopsy on Jeffrey...
Amen, sis. Hey, listen. And look, if you're new here, this is not a channel where I'm going to sympathize with somebody that murdered 17 people. And it's just so funny because I've actually received criticism before where people are like, I can't believe BOZE is celebrating somebody dying. Well,
I am.
Jeffrey Dahmer says he died from multiple
I don't know what to tell you. Jeffrey
Tomorrow,
Dahmer, dude.
Dahmer's mother speaks out for the first
bro,
time.
anybody that wants to defend Jeffrey Dahmer can get the out. Y'all know sometimes I'll be sitting here talking about some, I'm accepting of all other opinions, other, ways of looking at things. Your, twos are welcome. Your opinion is welcome. You know what? Man, I can't even. Get out. Just go. I can't do it. Dahmer sympathizers out.
Hard copy, her
Get out.
first public comment since the murder.
This is the man suspected of murdering Jeffrey Dahmer, 25-year-old Christopher Scarver of Milwaukee, serving life for a 1990 murder. The police report from that crime depicts an unstable man. He asked to add a T to his name whenever it appeared as Chris, so it would read Christ. His attorney tried an insanity defense. It failed.
So you have a class of people like Christopher Scarver in penal situations who have mental problems but are incarcerated rather than in hospitals.
Dahmer, according to medical officials, was beaten beyond recognition while working on a 3-convict janitor crew, which included the suspect. A third inmate, Jesse Anderson, was critically injured. The 3 were reportedly left alone for 20 minutes.
It is something that we did not expect.
Jesse was critically injured, but he later died from his injuries in the hospital. Chris Scarver killed both of them with just a metal rod.
And had we been aware of something pending, we certainly would have taken preventative action.
Although Dahmer's crimes were known worldwide, the murder case against Jesse Anderson made major headlines here in Milwaukee. His attorney believes the prison was negligent for putting 2 notorious inmates together, along with another violent criminal. month. Attorney Ronald Hendry is also convinced of the motive.
Anybody who sits back and
The
says
jail-
that they
nah,
don't
the
think
jail
that
said,
race had
"Let
something
them
to do with
fight."
this probably isn't on the same planet.
Most of Dahmer's victims were minorities. Jesse Anderson, convicted of killing his wife, blamed that murder
Yep.
on 2 black men.
Yep.
Corrections officials have created a special panel to investigate the attack. And a final irony, the divorced parents of Jeffrey Dahmer, the man who dismembered his victims, are fighting over his remains. Dawn Fratangelo, NBC News.
Jeffrey Dahmer requested that he would be cremated, and afterwards both of his parents were fighting over his brain because his mom was saying, "We should send his brain off to be studied. Jeff said that no matter what, he wanted to help in some way, and donating his brain would really do that." I mean, she can truly keep it. I mean, like, what are we gonna do? Scan Jeffrey Dahmer's brain and be like, wow, there's a bunch of up shit in here. Well, all right, let's burn it. Like, I mean, that's basically what would happen. Quick little interview with the son of Christopher Scarver, the man that killed Jeffrey Dahmer.
Do you remember when you learned that your father murdered Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes. It was about 10. I saw it on TV, and that's how I found out. So, yeah.
So you suddenly see your father?
Yeah, it's a big picture that popped up, and I was just shocked at that point.
50% of the kids in juvenile detention have a parent incarcerated.
Damn.
And we're really trying to slow this down.
As a retired federal prison warden, Percy Pitzer has spent most of his life around prisoners. Now he wants to help their children.
It's a lot of pressure on a kid when a parent is incarcerated.
His foundation helps the children of inmates get a college degree. One scholarship recipient is the son of the man who murdered notorious serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer while in prison.
Okay.
Do you remember the first time that you heard the name Jeffrey Dahmer?
Heard it a lot growing up. That's all I heard. When I was young, I didn't know what it meant, obviously, but, you know, that name, you know, it's been around me for my whole life, so.
Chris Scarver, a senior at Bethany Lutheran College, has lived with the
seems like a
secret
nice
his
guy.
whole life, but is finally...
Like, he seems like a pretty just nice, chill dude. You never would have guessed that his dad is somebody that murdered Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, that would mess me up.
ready to talk about it. He was born just after his father, also named Christopher Scarver, committed a murder that would land him in jail with Dahmer. It was a cold-blooded killing of a job trainer in Milwaukee.
For a long time, I believed he was going to come home, man. You know, I always kept that hope. And then, you know, after a while, you know, I just said, you know.
Nah, he already had a life sentence.
I don't know. It hit me that maybe it won't happen, you know. And I got mad, and that turned into anger.
And then his father committed another crime that ensured he would never be coming home. He bludgeoned Jeffrey Dahmer and another inmate to death in the prison gym.
Do you ever think about because, you know, there's still...
Wait, Dances said, I've seen people literally excuse Dahmer, put all the blame on his parents, and absolutely no blame on him, and I feel like we should still put the blame on Dahmer. All I have to say is if people are defending Jeffrey Dahmer, it is a phase in their life, and they will be very, very, very embarrassed later.
A question as to whether guards may have set up your father because he should not have been left alone with the other 2 men in prison.
You know, I think about that all the time, you know, and it makes me wonder if he even did it.
Chris understands, however, his father pleaded no contest to the murders and is now serving 3 life terms in Colorado. But Chris said he also knows something else.
6'3" with the hair.
His father saved his life from becoming one of those statistics.
But I was actually starting to go down the wrong road, and I started to, well, that's why I wrote him. You know, I didn't know what to do. I needed some guidance, and I just told him everything that I was going through and how I felt about me and his relationship, all those built up years, all that pain that I had. I finally just let it go and just, you know, talk to him.
And his father wrote right back with advice.
Oh, dude, the letters. Greetings, dear son. I just got your letter. The newspaper clippings in your diploma yesterday.
Tough times don't last, tough people do.
Damn.
And you are the toughest kid I know.
This man seems,
Chris so credits his father with putting him back on the right road, he keeps a prison.
Sounds like Chris Scarver woke up, looked at the work list for the day, and said he got something to do.
Of his dad on his dorm room door.
And I hit the door like this, just to say, okay, this is what you're doing this for.
I'm very curious what Jeffrey Dahmer's mother has to say, honestly, because you know which one was really shocking to me? Richard Poplowski's mom's interview. It was really wild.
Now, the woman who raised one of America's most notorious serial killers speaks out.
I know this sounds strange, but he did not mean to hurt anyone.
Girl, Jesus, give me strength. Bust out the holy water for this one, girl.
Jeffrey Dahmer's mother from the heart, next. A brutal killer who brought pain and suffering to so many families. But tonight, we learn firsthand about the pain he brought to this woman, his own mother. Imagine her anguish upon learning what her son had done.
There's a couple ways that parents of killers process it. A really good example is Columbine. Eric Harris and his family, after Columbine happened, they went radio silent. No press, no media, moved away from their home, never spoke about it, and we'll never know how they feel. Now, on the other side, the other shooter in Columbine, Dylan Klebold, his mother's name is Sue Klebold. She has written books about what her son did. She has done TED Talks about what her son did. You know, I don't know if it was because she got a lot of hate for what Dylan did, or if it's because, you know, her son caused this great tragedy, caused a lot of pain, and she wanted to try to speak out so this didn't happen to other people. So those are kind of the two extremes of how parents of killers can act, and it's interesting because it's all rolled up into one case. I have no idea what Jeffrey Dahmer's mother's going to be like.
You know, Barry, when I told people I was going to interview Joyce Dahmer, many of them visibly cringed and wondered what in the world she could possibly have to say.
Hey,
well, I'll tell you, she is a remarkable woman, an educated woman with a master's degree in counseling. Joyce Dahmer has been to hell and back, and what she has to say will probably surprise you.
Okay.
I still love my son. I've never stopped loving my son. He was a beautiful baby. He was a wonderful child. He was always been loved.
The words of a devoted mother, and make no mistake about it, that's what Joyce Dahmer was and is. She filled her son Jeff's baby book with memories of a happy time, his first baby picture, a lock of his hair.
Okay, I gotta ask you guys. I gotta bring you in here. If your son was a mass murderer, or in this case, a serial killer, 17 people, after it happened and it was all true, it was irrefutable, would you reject your son and, you know, denounce him, cast him out of the family? Or would you continue to support him and give him that love? There's no right or wrong answers here. I'm just curious what type of person you are. And, you know, sometimes it's a question we ask ourselves in our head, because I know some of you are thinking, I would keep loving my son, but you're not going to say it. That's fine. You know, it's a little food for thought for you. Now, oof, I would have to reject, truly.
The words to the first prayer the little 2.5-year-old Jeff ever learned. Now I lay me down to sleep. Do you remember where you were when you heard this news about your son?
Well, it wouldn't be very easy to forget. I'd come home about a half an hour early, and one of my friends from Ohio, where the news came on a couple hours earlier, called and had a hard time telling me why they wanted me to watch television. But I found out about it like everyone else. In about a half an hour, he was on television.
It's obvious that there has been a number of human specimens found within the apartment, and to a certain extent, they have been there sometime.
What did your friend say? Do you remember the words?
I remember the words, yes, it was very difficult. She simply said, Jeffrey's in trouble, and I said, what kind? And she said,
big trouble.
Bad trouble.
Bad trouble.
It was trouble so heinous no parent can ever imagine. A son who stood accused of mutilation, murder, and cannibalism. A son who admitted to every horrible thing being said about him. Severed heads in his freezer, body parts preserved in formaldehyde, a gallery of 17 victims, mostly from the inner city.
Jeff was a victim of a compulsion, an obsession. When I went to visit him, I asked him what it had been like during all of these years and what...
Okay, so there's this thing that's called the OCD cycle. I'm going to explain it first and then how this gets like all f***ed up in terms of Dahmer. But his case is a very small subset of this. So the OCD cycle is obsessive thought. It could be anything. And then you have the thought, and it could be obsessive thought. I'm failing in school. It just pops up out of nowhere. It's completely random. Like it slightly gets triggered by something, but it feels like a truck just driving into your brain. And it goes, I'm failing in school. I'm failing in school right now. I'm failing in school. And then the anxiety kicks in. You're like, oh my God, I'm failing. And the spiral kind of starts, and you're spiraling down, you're spiraling down, you're spiraling down. And then your compulsion would be, okay, I need to make a schedule. I need to make a list of every single schoolwork thing I have to do. That's what I'm going to do. And then you perform the compulsion, and then you get this temporary relief, right? But the problem is you're getting this obsessive thought and you're reacting to it. And so it perpetuates the cycle. It's kind of a practice like in meditation to let your thoughts float by. In Dahmer's case, if he has something that could be morbid obsessions or really bad thoughts, almost everyone has these, okay? You could have a thought like, I should drink bleach. It sounds crazy, right? But kind of the way that it works is you actually have like 8 other thoughts, but there's one thought on the menu that's like really fucked up. They're called morbid thoughts or morbid obsessions. And then you don't notice everything else that's on the menu. You just keep focusing on that really fucked up thought you have. And you're like, why am I thinking about drinking bleach? Like, what? Like, why am I must be horrible. I must be bad. Well, then some people have an obsessive thought that is far more grim than that. And it may not be harming themselves. It could be harming others. And they obsess over this morbid obsession that's on their menu without looking at everything else that's on the menu. And so then they start to fixate on that one thing, because when you tell the human brain not to do something, it's going to do it. And it's going to do it tenfold, especially if you're a person that has any type of obsessive compulsive anxiety or anything of that nature. And so some people, when they have these morbid thoughts, they focus on that one thing and they think, well, why am I thinking this up thing all the time? Why am I thinking this? Why am I thinking this? I must be bad. I must be bad. I must be bad. Anxiety kicks in, and then sometimes they can develop a morbid compulsion. What she's saying in this moment is that he had these morbid obsessions and he built like disgusting compulsions around them, and it just perpetuated the cycle. So he did it again, and he did it again, and he did it again, and he did it again. Truly, it's no fucking excuse. Millions and millions of Americans deal with morbid thoughts or OCD or that OCD pattern all the time, and you are supposed to look at the full menu of thoughts, not focus on the morbid one, and let those thoughts skate by. That is what you are supposed to do. That's how you combat that. You don't give in to the morbid thought and ramp up on it, okay? Don't drink that bleach. Don't do it. And OCD it's incredibly damaging. And I mean, even further than that, like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like OCPD. It's completely different than OCD. I feel like OCD is one of the most misunderstood disorders, or, you know, whatever.
When I went to visit him, I asked him what it had been like during all of these years. And
what did he say to that?
He said, I was so scared. I was scared every minute, and I tried to stop, and I couldn't.
Joyce Dahmer, accompanied by a psychotherapist friend, agreed to speak out to Hard Copy about her son, about what she thinks society should do now with Jeffrey Dahmer, and about those hurtful headlines that seem to blame her for what Jeff...
Wait, Cannibal told me his AIDS worker mom turned him into a monster.
became.
Intellectually, I knew, I don't know how this sounds, but I knew that I'd done a good job as a parent. I knew this had to come from something outside of Jeff. I think there's a lot to be learned, and one of the things that our society does have to be aware of is that we still do have a prejudice. We have a stereotype, and we still do blame mothers.
Dr. Angela Brown Miller has studied the phenomenon of what happens to the parents of killers. She and Joyce are now planning a book to counter this one written by Jeff's father, in which he searches endlessly for clues to Jeff's obsession. Dr. Brown Miller says without further study, there just is no answer.
We do not have an explanation for Jeff's behavior.
I just explained explained
in
it.
the absence of an explanation.
Read
for
the
anything,
DSM.
we
It's
get
not
scared.
that
We're afraid of unknowns.
Y'all know what this
So we go
is. Did
for
they know what this was in the
prefabricated
70s?
answers,
They said
such
it.
as the parents and especially the moms. And this has been a ready-made answer. Mother, the monster maker, has been the easy way out of dealing with something we just can't explain.
Joyce Dahmer talks to her son on the phone once a week. He is depressed, she says, but fills his time cleaning the prison gymnasium and writing letters on his new typewriter. But as a certified counselor herself, one thing bothers Joyce, and it is this. Jeffrey Dahmer gets no therapy. He sees no psychiatrists, and no one comes in to study him in an effort
We don't really want to waste the dollars there.
to find out what motivated this most
A man that
infamous
gave
killer.
in to his morbid
Something
thoughts.
needs to be learned from this. And I think Jeff is intelligent enough that if he gets some help, he might be able to help people. I'm not talking about that Jeff will ever be out of prison again. He won't, no matter what he finds out about himself. But I think he has a right as a human being. He's not a monster, he's a human being. And I think he deserves some help.
Joyce was working as a counselor for AIDS patients when the news about Jeff broke. Her co-workers were all very supportive, she says. But then she got a new boss, and she realized her life had changed forever.
I experienced on the job having an employer tell me to take Jeff's picture off my desk, to that I would no longer be allowed to represent the company in the public, that I'd sort of become the elephant in the living room. Just little kind of insidious kinds of things, and no matter how well prepared you might be, they do play on your emotions and how you feel about yourself.
And so, not long ago, Jeffrey Dahmer's mother, under a cloud of her firstborn son's sins, tried to take her own life.
Oh.
She says the pain and the depression was just too much.
Ugh.
Today, she thanks God that she was spared and has come to decide that with so many murders happening every day in America, there must be other parents out there who, like her, are just trying to find a way to cope.
There's a murder happening every single day in our society. That means there are mothers and fathers, there are sisters and brothers, there are extended family. Jeff is a
I feel bad for her. I don't feel
situation.
anything for Jeffrey Dahmer. Got nothing.
And my concern
Tank's
is
empty, baby.
that as bad as it is for me, it's got to be that bad for other parents. And maybe there's...
Wait, I love that. Samantha said, weird mix of emotions here. Let me get my wheel. Let's go get the wheel together. Remember, feelings wheel, folks. We start in the center and we blend outward. We blend outward. Okay, bad, surprised, happy, sad, disgusted, angry, fearful. Honestly, wow, rare one here for me. I gotta go to disgusted. I feel this. I feel some sympathy for her, but I'm still in the disgusted sector. Okay, let's keep it going. You don't have to be in the same thing. I'm disgusted, and then I went to repelled because I just feel uncomfortable. And then I kind of went somewhere between horrified and hesitant because I think that I almost want to feel bad for Joyce, but these circumstances are just so disgusting that I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stay out of this. Damn, hesitant is an emotion. That's crazy. Yeah, that's where I'm at. All right, thank you guys for our Feelings Wheel session. Let's get back to the video.
Something I can do.
Joyce is still very fragile, still recovering from her suicide attempt. But her goal is to set up some sort of support group for parents of killers, maybe an 800 hotline. And of course, there's her book. She says she's had trouble finding a publisher.
Man.
They seem to think that Mr. Dahmer's book is enough on the subject. But Joyce says she won't.
Being a parent of a killer, it has two major things that most human beings won't really experience in their lifetime. One, being cast out of society. Just straight up, that's what happened. No matter how much Sue Klebold has talked about what her son did, people have essentially cast Sue out of society. Two, the guilt of knowing that you raised that child and feeling like you are the ultimate failure as a parent. That's what it feels like. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what it's going to feel like for them. And those are incredibly heavy things that most people just can't navigate. All right, that's my little update on that. Cause look, I ain't really interested in watching the series, but I'll tell y'all what happened.